Cybersecurity is an issue that all of us have been interested in for quite some time, and I think maybe it's fair to say that none of us are satisfied that Congress is equipped to regulate in this area, certainly not yet. You may have come today with a framing to the issue, and this is the way it's being set up on Capitol Hill right now. Which bill is the right bill? Is it McCain in the Senate? Is it the Lieberman-Collins bill? Is it the Rogers bill over here, or the Lundgren bill? I don't think we want to embrace that framing here, because the questions are more basic. We're going to talk about what is cybersecurity and how is it being talked about, what are the solutions, and again, is Congress in a position to participate in the solutions? First, I'll say that I use the word cybersecurity nowadays, but for a long time I've been a doubter of the cyber prefix. If you talk to tech people, the people who are actually working on technologies, rarely do they ever say cyber. They don't say, I went and cyber secured this computer. I've cyber fixed this cyber problem. Because they think about these problems with more precision. Cybersecurity and cyber whatever, these are generalizations that we use in common language that aren't necessarily ways of talking about these problems that are fixing on the actual problems and guiding us toward real solutions. So I've often said that when I hear the word cyber, I think snake oil. That's not absolutely true. People are using the word cybersecurity here to try to capture all the different things that are involved. But when you hear cyber, realize that you're talking about a huge generalization. Cybersecurity really is best thought of as a variety of problems in securing computers, networks, and data. Thousands of different problems. And these problems will be addressed by tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of different actors over a long period of time. There's not going to be any solution that fixes cybersecurity, just like there's been no solution that fixes physical security. We have security in the physical area because we have tens of thousands of years of experience with it. We have solutions in the physical security area that are pretty good, that are adequate. And our goal in the area of cybersecurity is to get security for computers, networks, and data that are good enough to serve. So think about this problem as being thousands of different problems, not one. Again, to be addressed by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of different actors over a long period of time. What do you do when you have a huge array of problems? Is it the best thing to do to centralize your attack on those problems? Or should you perhaps instead think about assigning responsibility for solving those problems to the actors that are best positioned to address them? Well, I think experience shows that centralizing is often a mistake. The knowledge available, though we may study it as hard as we possibly can, the knowledge available to us in Congress, the knowledge available to federal agencies, is very, very limited compared to the knowledge that rests with the people who own and operate the computers, networks, and data. Not only that, the incentives are in the right place with the owners of computers and networks and data, because if they fail to secure their infrastructure, they begin losing money from the first instant. So the incentive set is probably right for the owners of all the infrastructure that we'd like to have secured. The incentive structure is not the same when federal agencies or when Congress address these problems. Congress gets paid whether it fixes the problem or not. Federal agencies get paid whether they fix the problem or not. So rather than centralizing, which is the major theme of the cybersecurity legislation we've seen, assigning responsibility or leaving responsibility where it already is. That is, the owners of computers, networks, and data have that responsibility now, and they should keep it. The cybersecurity legislation that we've seen uses a lot of big words. One of my favorite is cybersecurity performance requirements from the Lieberman-Collins bill. That's a big word that means regulation. And I was really impressed when I read that bill to realize all the language, all the structure, all the comings and goings that amount to a regulatory regime for cybersecurity. Well, I don't know that any federal agency is going to be in a position to write the regulations that fix this problem. Instead, you saw a lot of things that you might call 21st century paperwork violations. Have you certified to the federal agency that you've instituted a program to try to address cybersecurity? Well, how much time is going to be spent on certifying to federal agencies that work has been done that's not being spent on actually getting that work done? In the privacy area, which is a focus of mine, I was impressed, and this is somewhat security related too, that under security regulations under the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, financial services providers, which had gone through all the paperwork requirements, still were suffering security breaches. Well, what if they'd taken the money that they spent on going through the paperwork and had devoted that to actually securing their infrastructure? There are no quick fixes, and regulatory requirements, especially those that require a great deal of paperwork, certification, et cetera, are not likely to improve things in the cybersecurity area. Something that I've found particularly concerning is the proposal for information sharing, or the proposals for information sharing. Now, there's nothing wrong with information sharing, but mandated information sharing is an odd bird, or an odd duck. Everybody should share information appropriately, and there's no necessary mandate to do that. Think of another area like Homeland Security. See something, say something. Think of areas like the Bank Secrecy Act and suspicious activity reporting. What these things do, though they seem like the right thing, what they do is they encourage over-reporting. A financial services provider that doesn't provide any suspicious activity reports to its regulator will come under suspicion on the part of the regulator that it's not actually looking out for suspicious activity. So you get financial services providers that report non-suspicious financial activity in order to meet the regulatory need to have suspicious things reported. If you have a mandated information sharing environment, you're very much likely to have companies reporting things in as a way of showing information sharing without actual necessity for information sharing. Obviously, there should be information sharing where a need arises, and information sharing will happen when the need does arise. But we don't need to create a legal mandate to do so, and we don't need to create a federal center for doing so. I'm particularly worried about the languages you see popping up in all the bills, if I'm not mistaken, that allow information sharing notwithstanding any other provision of law. That is a huge, huge scythe cutting down unknown law that right now protects contracts, protects privacy, and perhaps protects security. Somebody who participates in this federally encouraged information sharing for cybersecurity purposes would not be subject to any other law. No state privacy tort, no state contract law. They wouldn't be subject to agreements they had entered into. The Privacy Act of 1974, the E-Government Act, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, the Stored Communications Act, none of these laws would apply if someone was information sharing with these information sharing centers as proposed in the various bills. That's concerning stuff, to see the rule of law go away in terms of information sharing for cybersecurity purposes. Surely Congress can do a better job and think precisely about what laws stand in the way of information sharing, if there are some, and amend those appropriately so that information sharing can happen naturally and appropriately. I think Ryan will go into some of the legal niceties more carefully. To set up the discussion just a little bit more, I'll talk about the way cybersecurity is presented to you here on the Hill. And that's the problem of threat exaggeration. I think one that Jerry will go into some. I'm particularly nonplussed when I hear about cyber terror and cyber war, because cyber terror does not exist. Let me say that again and emphatically. Cyber terror does not exist. And cyber war may exist in a relatively limited realm. That is, when there is an ongoing struggle for control of land or for the legitimacy or power of a government, and communications devices or communications tactics are used to address that war. But war is a very distinct thing, and we tend to use the word war inadvisedly, at least here on the Hill. Cyber war is a very rare thing. Cyber terror actually doesn't exist, I'll say it again, because there really is no way to terrorize people using computers. The most dangerous threats out there may take down the financial services system for a few days at worst. Now, that doesn't terrorize. I think the reaction for most people would be something more like having a snow day. I can't get cash out of the ATM, so I can't buy gas, so I can't come into work. It's not terrorizing, and there's no legitimate threat that these things can be done again. So we often hear of cyber terrorists, we often hear of cyber war, and that's a way of goading you into believing that the threats are bigger than they actually are. There are real problems out there. None of what I say should diminish the fact that cybersecurity is a host of very real problems. But the problems tend to be quite a bit more mundane than what you hear about. It involves patching your software, behaving in ways that protect your computers, networks, and data. There are real threats out there. We've heard about the Stuxnet virus, which was a very, very well constructed virus that had, for a period of time, had its intended effect in Iran on their nuclear weapons program. But the idea that the Stuxnet virus could be turned around and applied to just about anything else is precisely wrong. There's a really good 60 Minutes piece you might go look up, and watch and listen carefully to the speakers, because some of them are working some angles. That is, some of them will make money if Congress dedicates huge amounts of dollars to cybersecurity. Some of them don't know what they're talking about, and they say that the Stuxnet virus is now out in the wild and anything could happen. No, that was a very, very precisely written piece of software, written by people probably affiliated with the U.S. government or the Israeli government. At the highest quality software programming you get. There's no script kiddie that's going to turn Stuxnet out and level it on dams or bridges or any other kind of infrastructure. So these kinds of exaggeration incline you to think that Congress has to act. And I think I've made a partial case, at least, that even Congress acting wouldn't solve these problems. It's going to be years long, hundreds of thousands of people and institutions working on the thousands of different problems. And if we leave responsibility where it is, with the private actors that own most of the infrastructure in the United States, we'll be better off than if we have a regulatory environment and an information sharing environment that's really promiscuous, like the kinds of things we're looking at in these bills. So with that, let me turn it over to Jerry Brito, and we'll hear some more. Thank you.